Yeah, you guys, can you hear me okay?
It's shut off. Okay.
Cool. Yeah, I think so. He said that was okay.
Like whatever, you're supposed to be supporting reporters, so. To be honest, I'll get some. It's not like there's a lot.
Ben, be part of the entourage.
Number 7?
Yeah.
I told everybody else, but I'm going to do it.
Okay.
Hey.
Yeah,
I'll do that too.
help get people up here. They're not
Yeah,
listening to
we're
me
getting
because I'm a short man.
No, we're getting it.
Oh, and Blaine.
Wait, what is that? Oh. We're live?
And Facebook.
Well, you got this now.
Yeah, I got it.
Let me get mine.
Okay.
Hey, Councilor, you can get right back. You can get right back here.
Thank you.
All right.
Penny, come over here.
So we'll go ahead and get going, everyone. Thank you first and foremost to everyone who's here. My name is Councilman Charles Slife. I represent Ward 17, and I'm a proud co-sponsor of pay equity and transparency legislation that's being introduced tonight. I want to thank my fellow co-sponsors, Councilman Santana, Councilman House Jones, Mayor Bibb. I want to thank Council President Blaine Griffin for supporting us in this endeavor, and especially thanks to the outside organizations that have been part of this advocacy. see. And I just want to kick it off by saying that the last few years we've seen a lot of big wins for workers, things coming out of Cleveland City Hall, talking about updating how we accrue and let employees use vacation, making sure that people are being paid living wages, creating leave policies for workers. And I think what we're seeing today, pay equity and transparency, is a natural outgrowth and a way to ensure that people in Cleveland who statistically are very often coming from low-income households have the opportunity to have jobs that pay them fairly and allow them to build wealth for them and their families. So to get into more of the details about why this is important, I want to turn it over to my colleague, Councilwoman House Jones.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. We really want to thank you all so much for taking the time to be with us today. How did we get here? And I'll just start, from where I came in, being a public servant since about 2015. When I served at the State House, one of the first pieces of legislation I had the honor to be able to introduce was calling for the state of Ohio to create a gender pay task force. That was then with Representative Driehaus, who is now a commissioner down in Hamilton County in Cincinnati. And it really opened my eyes to what was happening. Many times we look at this as a woman issues, but we're talking about families, right? This is about the economic vitality here within our city. We have heard far too often about Cleveland being on the wrong side of economic, equality, being one of the poorest cities in Ohio. And we hear a lot of conversations. As a legislator, our responsibility is to do something actually about it. Councilman Slife have shared many of the things that we have been doing to focus on thriving families and economic growth so that we can close the pay gap for women and families alike so that Cleveland will be on a better pathway forward, right? Here in Cleveland, knowing our average household income is around $39,000, $35,000, depending on whose statistics you're looking at. But when you look at communities like Ward 7 is $25,000. When you look at communities such as Councilman Stars in Ward 5, it's $19,000. We know that is not enough. And if there's an obligation and a responsibility that we here in the city of Cleveland have to do what we can to help workers have an equal footing when they are going for employment opportunities, to know where they start. A lot of times people want to judge you on your past, but when you are seeking employment, you are looking for opportunities to be a contributing member, and you are going to be adding to companies' bottom line. And we know our pay equity and transparency legislation that we are rolling out today will really position workers and companies to do right by workers, but for workers to be empowered to know where they should be going at the negotiation table, and then also having a level of cover of when you feel like something is a misstep, where can you actually go to do some further investigation? So I'm really looking forward to us going through the legislative process to see that pay equity and transparency is a reality in the city of Cleveland, and so that Clevelanders know that you have a city, you have public servants who are doing all that we can to increase the vitality of families here in the city of Cleveland. So with that being said, I'm going to pass it over to my joint sponsor, Councilman Slife, that will go specifically into the details of what is in the legislation, and then we will go into hearing the administration, having some stories, and then be willing to open up to questions. Councilman Slife.
All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about some of the mechanics of the legislation, how it works, and some of the next steps. But beforehand, I want to share that this is not a new concept. And in fact, arguably, Ohio is late to the game on this. This is in over 20 states. What we're introducing today is already reality. And that's states across the country, blue, purple, red. But there's no statewide law in Ohio that compels this to happen. So cities in Ohio have been taking the lead to advocate for their residents and their workers, and that's what we're doing here today. So the two major things that this legislation will do is it will require businesses with more than 15 employees, when they make job postings, to post what that salary is, whether it's an hourly wage band or an annual salary, so that workers know from the forefront what they're applying for and if it aligns with their needs. I don't know, speaking personally, I've been to job interviews and taken all the time only to find out that what was being offered was not going to be commensurate with what I was looking for or felt I was qualified applied for or needed. So this will allow, that transparency will allow workers, potential workers and applicants to understand from the forefront if this is a viable prospect for them or not. It also prevents businesses from using salary history as a way to set salary. Now, those conversations are obviously going to happen to some degree. However, what data have shown are that people who are asked to report previous salary, especially people who are lower income, women, people from disadvantaged communities, it winds up creating this cycle of continuously being underpaid relative to industry averages, colleagues. So those two things combined give us an assurance that more people will be able to know what jobs they're applying for and be being paid the salary or the hourly rate that is commensurate with their skills and what the job is able to, what they've essentially budgeted for. So it's also very important for us to say that we are not looking to be punitive to businesses across the city of Cleveland. As I said, this is very common across the country. Many, maybe most, already engage in these practices. However, we do have a whole system set up in partnership with the Fair Employment Wage Board, which was reconstituted by City Hall, to help businesses who maybe find themselves out of compliance to become into compliance. So if there's an instance, a complaint, someone has 180 days to file something with the Fair Employment Wage Board, there's then a review and an opportunity for those businesses to essentially cure the issue rather than going forward. Now, if a business doesn't cure it, the Fair Employment Wage Board also does have the authority to begin issuing civil penalties. However, that's not what we're looking to accomplish here. And then I'll just close with the next steps. This is being introduced tonight. It's going to come through our council legislative process. We're in communication with the Fair Employment Wage Board, as you would expect. However, as you can see, there's a lot of enthusiasm both within the body, within the building, within our community for this type of legislation, and I'm eager to see it move forward. And with that, what I'd like to do is introduce Austin Davis, who works within the Office of the Mayor. This is a partnership between council and the Bibb administration, and if Mr. Davis could share the administration's perspective on this legislation at this time. Thank you. And I don't know where you are. There you are.
Come on down. Thank you, Councilman Slife. It's a pleasure to be here. It is an honor to be invited to these council chambers on behalf of Mayor Bibb to offer a couple words of thanks and encouragement and optimism about the future. I want to emphasize 3 points that Councilman Slife and Councilwoman House Jones have already touched on. First, we're following best practices here. The legislation that's being discussed is already reflected in at least 18 other states and all the other major cities in the state of Ohio, Columbus and Cincinnati. We're looking for things that have already been done, treading paths that have already been tread, and building on the work that's been done in this state already. We're very excited to bring Cleveland to the forefront after so many good examples before us. Second, together, we've created a really ambitious pro-worker agenda here in the city of Cleveland. This is between the Bibb administration and the city council. This includes things like reestablishing the Fair Employment Wage Board, which lay dormant for 20 years. Things like preventing the city from contracting with firms that have engaged in wage theft. Things like creating that new parental leave benefit that Councilman Slife mentioned, and things like increasing the city's living wage or fair employment wage, making sure it's inflation adjusted every year so we can make sure workers who are doing business with the city are treated fairly. This is what happens when our branches work together. We can get so much more done, and this is an exciting opportunity to see it come to fruition here. And I think the last point I want to make, without getting into any of the nuts and bolts, is this is really about folks who you know, and maybe somebody who is yourself or maybe someone close to you. This is legislation that's designed to address stories that are too common in our society, where somebody had a first job or a job earlier in their career trajectory where that salary held them back for years. That salary has come back to haunt them in future negotiations time and again. We have to break these cycles. Many states have already done so. Many cities have already done so. It's our turn and our time to stand up for fairness, transparency, and equal opportunity. So on behalf of Mayor Bibb, again, thank you for inviting me here to all of our council friends, and we look forward to the legislative discussions to come.
Next, we would like to introduce Dr. Jennifer Bosco of Plexus, the Inclusive Hub Director, and she'll have some remarks.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Dr. Jennifer Bosco, she, her. I am the director of the Business Inclusion Hub with Plexus, the LGBTQ Chamber of Commerce for Northeast Ohio. I want to thank you so much for considering this really important legislation, and thank you, council folks, for bringing this to the table here. I want to speak about the impact this has on our businesses and the importance that it brings to our economy. The businesses that we've worked with to set up pay equity initiatives have not only streamlined their practices, they've been able to save time when it comes to developing and aligning their jobs with the market that's out there. It also aligns with market standards, so we can compete with other major markets that are already doing pay equity. So our businesses are able to see what the market is, what people are looking for in terms of skills. We're also able to offer jobs based on skills and the value of the work rather than what people were paid for before. And that's really key for a business who can sometimes save some money as well, and also make it equitable throughout. Transparency and equitable frameworks when it comes to salaries also build a lot of trust between the business, employees, and potential candidates, as well as consumers. Our young workforce are looking for ethical and inclusive-minded businesses, and businesses who show up first with Pay Equity Forward are ones that they are going to be attracted to and apply to. We are seeing in the job market right now that potential employers are looking only and applying only for people who are posting their salaries. And businesses that we have seen that have implemented this have not only increased morale and productivity, they have decreased turnover, they've boosted their reputation, and in the end been able to increase performance metrics across the board. And so this is including profitability, innovation, reputation with employees and consumers, and position for long-term success. I want to thank you again for considering. Thanks.
Thank you, Doctor. I'd also like to introduce Sandra Ellington from SEIU Local 1, and who SEIU has also been very involved in this and obviously represents many workers within our region who do so much critical work, and their partnership in this process has been very valuable. So thank you.
Good afternoon. Hi. Hello, my name is Sandra Ellington, and I've been a janitor for almost 20 years. I've been a city worker for 17 years. I have been a local 1 executive board member for 16 years. I've been a leader for a long time in this city, and this is a long time coming, and I am so proud of my city. We did it. We put a mark in the sand, and we said enough was enough. I want to thank City Council. I appreciate this for giving me the opportunity to speak on the groundbreaking legislation that's going to help everybody, no matter where you're from, east side, west side, whether you're black, white, LGBTQ+, it doesn't make a difference. Every human being deserves a chance. We are all a part of the wheel of life, and we all bring something to the table. And I would also like to say, this groundbreaking equal pay legislation that we're introducing today is a win for working people of Cleveland. This is one Cleveland. This is not two Clevelands. Prohibiting wage discrimination in the workplace ensures that fairness, equality in the workplace. Secondly, having the increase in pay and transparency is essential because the information, there is a super important win when many working people have to provide for their families. Every dollar counts when you're a working person. It's very, very important. I could never be comfortable knowing my neighbor is not getting the same wage I'm getting. We need equal grounding when we go to that table. It's important. Every dollar, healthcare, everything counts. Lastly, establishing a citywide task force to address work towards closing the pay gap and beginning the step to build one Cleveland. We are one Cleveland. A zip code should not determine whether or not how much money you bring into your household. This is important. Everybody needs a job to survive and to thrive and to take care of their family. This legislation is so important. This has been work. I am so proud of City Council. I want to thank everybody. It was not only SEIU, it was Cleveland Jobs for Justice that played a part also, but I want to thank everybody, and I am so proud of my city. I have no words. I am extremely proud of y'all. Thank you.
Okay, so I think at this point, we are going to move over into the question and answer phase of the program. I believe back in the back, the microphone, if Daryl could point to it, I believe that is also on for the box, which I know might not be the best sound quality for the news stations. But happy to field any questions. And again, I want to thank all of you for being here. I want to thank everyone assembled here. And this is a very exciting day in Cleveland City Hall. Any questions? Nailed it.
Nailed it, baby.
All right. Well, we're happy to talk with anyone afterwards, and thank you again. Stick around for Finance Committee. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, you go over there. Don't be scared.
You can make it over there.
You can come this way. You're taking a long scenic route.
We just want to make sure that the question gets picked up by audio. That's the only thing. So, Sean's going to ask a question. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit more about the teeth that this legislation will have, and both what companies will be, I guess, under this legislation, whether they have to do work in Cleveland or incorporated in Cleveland, and also like what could the penalties be if trying to get them to voluntarily comply with it doesn't work?
Sure. So it's businesses in Cleveland and hiring in Cleveland. The teeth that I had mentioned, essentially, if that 90-day period of working to cure any issue is not met, it's at the discretion of the Fair Employment Wage Board. The way the legislation is written, they're not mandated to issue any specific fine. They may, and it's up to certain limits. So I believe that if a failure in the first instance would be up to $1,000, and then it increases up, I believe the highest penalty at that point is $2,500. But again, it's been really important to us. You know, this is a learning curve, and for some, for others not. For our largest employers, especially those who operate interstate, they're doing this already because in order to operate in places, whether it's California or Montana or Kentucky, they have to do this already. I think the learning curve that we spoke most about was our smaller businesses, and say, you know, at Slife's Aquarium World, which is a small business I just invented. You know, if I'm going online and you're just using an employment form that asks for salary history, that's an opportunity to say, hey, we understand that you grabbed that off the internet. Here's why it's actually not even to your benefit to ask those questions. Well, here's why it's harmful to workers. So we're going to help you just make sure that we revise that employment application to make sure that this isn't a problem moving forward. So I am very hopeful that the Fair Employment Wage Board is not having to be bogged down by a lot of this work based on the intentionality that's gone into this process.
Will there be any rules about the salary range, like looking for jobs myself, you might see a salary range is like 40 grand to 190. Like they're just trying to comply with it, but it's a giant range.
Yeah, it doesn't have to say the annual salary will be $42,100.09. It is exactly that you're applying for a job with a salary range. It even goes into saying that if someone applying for a job does disclose their salary sort of unprompted, that the business is held harmless from that. They did not ask the question. And it does acknowledge that through the course of job application, employment interviews, certainly payment will come up. What this legislation seeks to do is have primary decisions not based off of that and not leading with those questions, since they can influence the conversation as it unfolds.
Can you talk a little bit about the task force that's outlined in this legislation? Just start with that and I'll follow up.
The Employment Wage Board, or the group that's kind of come together?
The press release said something about a task force that was going to be established to increase pay equity across the city.
That's a part of the Fair Wage.
Yeah, that's essentially the Fair Employment
Okay.
Wage Board. So as Mr. Davis said, the Fair Employment Wage Board existed on paper for a number of years, was not operating, and it was reestablished around the same time as our living wage ordinance. We see this as a great opportunity to not only make sure that a group of experts that's most adept at tackling these issues does so, but also ensures that at some future point, if there's a temptation to let a board like that sunset again, that it wouldn't be feasible because they do have a workflow, they do contribute something, and I, speaking with some of the members of the Fair Employment Wage Board, haven't gotten to all of them, there's a lot of excitement and an understanding, what the value of this legislation is.
And how are you all going to make an attempt to make sure that businesses know about this? It sounds like it's kind of complaint-based, so just making sure that not only businesses know about this, but workers know that they can bring this to that board.
Yes, so I'm so glad you brought that up. Communications, communications, communications. So Cleveland City Council is under our own process of understanding. Next week, we'll be having a hearing about ways that we can improve our communication channels and working in partnership with the BIB administration, who is absolutely supportive of this legislation. Collectively, we are going to come up with a collective comprehensive marketing strategy so that employees and employers alike will understand what this is. And then we also have, like I said, the Fair Employment Wage Board that will also be, be tasked with sharing this information.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Last question.
Yeah, I just wanted to piggyback off what was mentioned already. Are there any goals for this year? We're in January. Are there any number-based goals that, hey, we want to reach X amount of employees, we want to make sure X amount or Y amount is changed, something that we as the media can kind of keep track of and see how this legislation has left that impact?
That is forthcoming as we will get together. Again, first we have to the first step is getting the legislation passed. It's not a guarantee if you get something introduced that it actually will be passed. Through the legislative process, we will be meeting with the administration and council to talk about what our communication strategy will be, along with the Fair Employment Wage Board.
Of course, and finally, with any legislation, there's always a mixed reaction to anything that gets passed. If you have an opportunity now, what message do you have for people in Cleveland that may hear about this news, may see the press release about this legislation, and still are kind of on the fence whether or not this is necessary?
It absolutely is necessary. Again, we've heard the statistics about where Cleveland's economic standing is. We are moving forward to ensure that Clevelanders are able to be set up to thrive, and we want the economic growth in our community. And this is another tool that we're putting in Cleveland's tool belt to ensure that all of our families are thriving. So join us, stay tuned. We encourage people to reach out to your council members, to encourage them to say yes and support the pay equity and transparency legislation, and just be a part of this.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, everyone.
Slip on some ice. Thank you. It's all right.